Blender tutorial. In the next 5 minutes we're going to try and go through as many of the different modifiers in Blender as possible to show you how you can speed up the modelling process. So the end result is going to be a little electricity pylon, probably not going to have time to add the textures, but you'll see how you can make copies of them and use the modifiers to speed things up as much as possible. So if we start with the cube you get when you load Blender, press Tab, which is next to Q, to go into edit mode, Control and Tab to get face mode selected, and then right click on the top face of your cube. We're going to scale that down by pressing S and then click when it's smaller, G to grab, and then Z to force it to move up the Z axis. So this is the basic shape of our pylon. Now we can add a modifier by clicking on the spanner and then add modifier. The first one we're going to play around with is the skin modifier, and that's changed all of the edges in the mesh into kind of tubes. So if we select all of the mesh by pressing A until it's all orange and then Control and A, you can change the diameter of these tubes. And then next we're going to add some supporting sections into the pylon by pressing Control and R. Move your mouse over one of the side pieces. Don't click just yet until you've scrolled up to add some more loop cuts in, and then click again to say where you want them, and then Control and Tab to go back into face mode. Right click on one of the middle sections and E to extrude, and then click and then S to scale down, and then do the same at the top. Right click to select, E to extrude, and then S to scale down and click. Okay, so the next modifier we want is to copy it across so it's symmetrical on both sides. So add a modifier, and it's going to be a mirror modifier. Now I want it to be mirrored in the green direction, which is Y, so I'm going to untick X and tick Y in the mirror modifier. If you know your pylons, you'll know that they're made out of triangles rather than rectangles, so we need to remake this mesh. So rather than doing it by hand, thankfully there's a modifier that will do it, and this decimate modifier is really powerful if you want to kind of regenerate your mesh. But it has to be done before the skin modifier, so I've clicked this up arrow to move it to the top. So the modifiers go in order from top to bottom. I'm going to go into object mode by pressing Tab with my mouse over here. Click triangulate on the decimate modifier, change the ratio to 0.9, and you'll see it's remade this shape but with triangles instead of rectangles, which saves an awful lot of effort. Okay, so we've got one pylon. I'm going to press S to scale and make it a little bit smaller. I'm going to move it in the red direction, which is X, so G and X. And then our next modifier is going to be an array modifier. Now this makes a copy of the pylon, but I want it to be further apart. So you can change the distance by dragging the offset here, and change the number of pylons by increasing the count. There we go. So we've got a number of pylons. I'd like them to be on a sort of hilly terrain. So Shift and A to add a mesh, and I want a plane. S to scale it up and click. And then press Tab to go into edit mode, and W to bring up this specials menu. If we click subdivide and change the number of cuts all the way up to 10, that split the plane now into 100 different squares. If we go back into object mode, we're pressing Tab. The next modifier we'll play around with is a displacement one. So this modifier will move all of the vertices up or down by a certain amount, but I don't want them to all move by the same amount. We're going to use a texture to control how much they move by. So I clicked add new texture, and then on the texture tab we're going to change the type of texture to noise. And you can see now that each of those points is moved by a different amount, a random amount. Back to the modifiers tab and change the strength down to like about 0.1. Maybe a little bit bigger, maybe 0.2. The final modifier we'll use is going to be a subdivision surface modifier, just to smooth it out a little bit. I'll click smooth shading and then G and Z to move it up so that we can't see the bottom of our pylons, and that's all the time we've got. So feel free to play around with it, add some textures to the ground plane, play around with the rendering settings, but I hope this has been useful to get an overview of which modifiers you can use in the modeling process. Thanks for listening.